أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا فضوا إليها وتركوك قائما. قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين.
الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والنازئات غرقا والناشطات نشطا والسابحات سبحا فالسابقات سبقا فالمدبرات أمرا يوم ترجف الراجفة تتبعها الرادفة قلوب يومئذ واجفة أبصارها خاشئة يقولون أئنا لمردودون في الحافرة أإذا كنا عظاما نخرة قالوا تلك إذا كرة خاسرة فإنما هي زجرة واحدة فإذا هم بالساهرة هل أتاك حديث موسى إذ ناداه ربه بالواد المقدس طوى اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى فقل هل لك إلى أن تزكى وأهديك إلى ربك فتخشى فأراه الآية الكبرى فكذب وعصى ثم أدبر يسعى فحشر فنادى فقال أنا ربكم الأعلى فأخذه الله نكال الآخرة والأولى إن في ذلك لعبرة لمن يخشى أأنتم أشد خلقا أم السماء بناها رفع سمكها فسواها وأغطش ليلها وأخرج ضحاها والأرض بعد ذلك دحاها أخرج منها ماءها ومرعاها والجبال أرساها متاعا لكم ولأنعامكم فإذا جاءت الطامة الكبرى يوم يتذكر الإنسان ما سعى وبرزت الجحيم لمن يرى فأما من طغى وآثر الحياة الدنيا فإن الجحيم هي المأوى وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى يسألونك عن الساعة أيان مرساها فيما أنت من ذكراها إلى ربك منتهاها إنما أنت منذر من يخشاها كأنهم يوم يرونها لم يلبثوا إلا عشية أو ضحاها صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويل لكل همزة لمزة الذي جمع مالا وعدده يحسب أن ماله أخلده كلا لينبذن في الحطمة وما أدراك ما الحطمة نار الله الموقدة التي تطلع على الأفئدة إنها عليهم مؤصدة في عمد ممددة صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، رو کے معصوم قم سے دیتی ہے صدا، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، تیرا دیدار نہیں بھائی قسمت میں میری، دے ہواؤں کو ذرا حکم ہے میرے علی، تیری آواز سنوں دل سنبھل جائے میرا، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، دیکھنے آئی ہوں میں قم میں صورت تیری، اے غریب الغرباء دیکھ غربت میری، اے غریب الغرباء دیکھ غربت میری، کوئی بتلاتا نہیں مجھ کو مشہد کا پتہ، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، مجھ پہ جو بیت گئے وہ علم کچھ بھی نہیں، سامنے زینب کے میرے غم کچھ بھی نہیں، میں نہ بازار گئی نہ چھنی میری ردا، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا، ہوں یتیمہ لیکن وہ یتیمہ تو نہیں، قیدی بابا کی قسم میں سکینہ تو نہیں، جس کے گوہر بھی چھنے جس کا دامن بھی جلا، اے غریب الغرباء اے میرے بھائی رضا۔ اب کچھ دیر کو تصور کرتے ہیں کربلا کا وہ منظر جہاں ایک اور بہن ہے جو اپنے بھائی کے لاشے کی طرف جا رہی ہے، لیکن پیروں پہ چل کے نہیں جاتی ہے، وہ گھٹنیوں کے بل جاتی ہے۔ آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین، آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین، تیرا چہرہ تیری آنکھیں بھول کب پائی حسین، چلتے ناقے سے گرایا خود کو جلتی ریت پر، چلتے ناقے سے گرایا خود کو جلتی ریت پر، گھٹنیوں کے بل میں تیری لاش تک آئی حسین، بس میں گھبرائی تھی خنجر تجھ پہ چلتا دیکھ کر، بس میں گھبرائی تھی خنجر تجھ پہ چلتا دیکھ کر، پھر کسی مشکل میں گر کر میں نہ گھبرائی حسین، آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین، پر محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, brothers, sisters in Imam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all the names listed on the screen in Kul Arwahil Mu'mineen wal Mu'minat, Sawab al-Fatiha. Ayat Yujibun is requested for the names listed on the screen and whoever is in need of it here and elsewhere. Let us all recite it together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amman yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu su. Amman yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu su. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Ladies, Majlis will be held tomorrow at 11 a.m. via Zoom. Now let us invite Sheikh to come to recite tonight's Majlis par Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا والطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين المكرمين الخيرين الفاضلين السيدين الصادقين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين للترى بمقدمه الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salaamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh. Last night, we took time exploring the concept of being a Sadiq and what does Sidq mean. And we did this because one of the names given to Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala is that he was known as a Sadiq and Amin. So Sadiq normally, we understood as being somebody who just tells the truth. And last night we tried to explain that Sidq, or being Sadiq, telling the truth is only one level and only one dimension of that. And a better understanding, a deeper understanding of Sidq, of truth or honesty, is not just in one's words, but it's what we call being real. Being in touch and in complete harmony with reality and never being astray from that. And another point is that when you are a Sadiq, right, somebody who embodies this quality of reality, it's not just that you yourself express reality, you yourself are in touch with reality, but you are actively engaged in trying to get others in sync with that same reality. And the one true reality that exists, al-haq, the truth, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that same sort of note and in that same theme, as we commemorate the Shahadat anniversary of our 8th beloved holy Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We want to continue this theme about authenticity and honesty and being real by looking at one of his titles as well. Now we all know, sometimes when we address this Imam, the 8th Imam, we sometimes send our salams to him and address him as Gharibul Ghuraba, the most Gharib of Gharib people, right? Ghuraba is the plural of Gharib. So what we'll do tonight, inshallah, is first figure out what does ghurba mean? What does it mean to be gharib? What does being gharib have to do with being sadiq? And after we establish that, then we'll try to understand why is it then that the 8th Imam is the most gharib out of all others who are gharib, all of the other ghuraba. Please recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The word gharib comes from ghurba. Normally when we talk about gharib, the translations that you'll find in most books are that, a gharib is somebody who's a stranger, somebody who's a foreigner, somebody who's lost, right? Or they're isolated. So it's close, right? It gets part of the meaning across, but of course, we're looking for a deeper meaning. So let's go back to the root word, which is ghurba, right? Ghain, ra, ba, right? These are the 3 root letters. And ghurba has a ta marbuta at the end. So ghurba, the ulama of Arabic say that ghurba indicates upon 2 things. Al-bu'd wal al-nawa, which is about being distant or being remote from something. So when we're talking about ghurba, when we're talking about being gharib, there's a relativity that's there. So when any 2 people or any 2 items or any 2 things in relation to distance, that's when you would describe and explain which one is gharib from the other, or what type of ghurba actually exists. Sometimes it's used physically, and that's usually the way that we understand it. Specifically for the eighth Imam, right? When we usually think of him being gharib al-ghuraba, what we think about is that, because he was taken away from his home. That's what we think about. And we also know that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is also addressed as gharib al-ghuraba as well. And they give the same meaning. Why? Because he was buried away from his family. He was taken away from his family. Right? He's in Karbala, everybody else is buried elsewhere. Medina, for example, right? So usually people think about just the physical part of it. And yes, that's one example, but that's not the only usage of ghurba or gharib. Gharib can describe anything which is far away from something else. So for example, sometimes Arabs, whenever there was a word that they didn't know, it was unknown to them, they didn't understand it in their language, they would call those words gharib. Right? This is a strange word, it's a foreign word, it's not part of our language. Also from that same root, ghain, ra, ba, we get another word, maghrib. Right? Maghrib, when it's normally used, is talking about the West, right? Or in academic terms, you call it the Occident. Mashriq, the East, is known as the Orient. Maghrib is in the West is known as the Occident. So why would the Arabs refer to the West or anything west of them as being Maghrib? Because literally that would mean the place which is unknown. Well, there's different meanings for it, or explanations. One is that because they had never traveled to the West, they had gone east, so they knew what was to the east of them, but they didn't know what was going on in the West. So because of that, it was unknown. It was a strange and foreign land to them. So they understood it and they called it the Maghrib, right? They don't know what's going on over there. Some ulama, though, especially those who describe words in terms of their spiritual, metaphysical meanings, say that Maghrib means something else in the metaphysical plane. And it means that when we're talking about being remote, Maghrib is explaining and describing something which is far removed and remote and distant from the truth. The truth, light, nur, is revealed in the east, in the mashriq, and then it sets and it ends up and it leaves in the maghrib. And they say that this both is a allegorical, metaphorical, metaphysical meaning, but it also applies to the physical world as well. Where do we have all these great prophets, all these great teachings, right? Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Shintoism, obviously all the Abrahamic faiths. Everything's in the East, right? These are Eastern traditions. Even to this day, generally speaking, the Eastern traditions, they're still in touch with the metaphysical realm. They're not enslaved to science or the material world. Whereas if you see what happened within Europe, as we used to talk about on Thursday nights, what we see in Europe, Enlightenment, now over here, what is everybody obsessed with? They've left the metaphysical truth and reality. They've left God, and now they're dealing in the physical world only. It's all about physical stuff, science, money, power, wealth, that's it. So many still say Maghrib has been explained specifically because of the metaphysical implications. And still to this day, we see that the amount of atheism or distance from God that still takes place in the Maghrib, where it does not exist so much so in the Mashriq, in the East. Another example of the word, the way that we use, for example, Gharib in Eastern languages, not Arabic, but even in Urdu, for example, right? Sometimes when we talk about somebody being Gharib, we talk about them in a sense of being faqir, right? That they're poor. So in that sense, we'd say that, look, they are distant or remote or removed from what? Wealth or health, or sometimes having a home if they're homeless, or having cleanliness, right? Because they have no access to basic hygienic materials. So that's a very physical interpretation of somebody being Gharib in the Urdu sense of it. But there's also the more metaphysical sense, right? The spiritual, psychological sense. That a person who is usually in a state of faqr, in a state of need, that needs wealth or health or things like this, they don't have a sense of tranquility. They don't have a state of peace of mind. They're constantly anxious and stressed out about whether they'll have enough to take care of themselves or their family every day. And we can say that people who right now, right, even in recent times because of COVID, maybe people have taken a hit in terms of their income, It can be very, very stressful right now. And when you lose that, you feel like you're, not at home. You feel that you're not in a state or a place of peace and tranquility. We literally say you don't feel at home anymore. Why? Because we don't have that same income, the same resources and wealth which we used to have at our disposal. We don't have that, so now we can't take care of ourselves. Or if we were the breadwinners, we can't take care of our family. And that's a terrible feeling to have. And may Allah increase all of our rizq so that we can take care of ourselves and our community members, inshallah. So this is a way that sometimes gharib is used in Urdu, meaning somebody who's distant from either physical wealth and health or being distant from that peace of mind. So this was our first question. Now, what does gharib and ghurba, having this distance or isolation, being remote, what does this have to do with being sadiq? This is our next question, which we'll answer. Inshallah, if you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Remember, being a sadiq was somebody who possessed and possesses the trait of sidq, meaning that they're real. They're in touch, in sync, and in harmony with everything that is real. They're in touch with the truth on all various different levels, the 7 levels that we explained. So a question might occur to us, right? We went through the levels last night. We talked about how the Prophet was the most perfect and complete individual, most perfect and complete creation, who was the most in sync and in harmony with reality, with truth, with tawheed, with Allah. We could ask ourselves, right? Why is it that we are so far from that? So far from the Prophet and his teachings? So far from the other ma'asumeen and their teachings? So far from Islam? So far from Allah? What's our problem? Why aren't we real? Why aren't we honest with ourselves? Why do we let the dunya take over ourselves? What stops us from being real? What stops us from that true meaning of authenticity? Being in touch with our fitrah, our theomorphic divine nature, which is our compass which guides us towards the truth, which every soul, every child is born on. What stops us from that? And the answer, according to some, is ghurba, is being distant. What are we talking about being distant and remote here? What do we mean? Right now, remember all the different levels that we went through. We'll mention them again in a few minutes. Right now, think about, for example, among your group of friends. Among your group of friends, right, your baraza, you have a certain idea in your mind, right? Let's say, you want to practice Islam, right? You want to pray on time. You want to observe hijab. You don't want to use profanity. You don't want to backbite and perform ghibah. That's what you want to do because that's true, that's real, that's what you want. But then the people around you and your close circle, your friends or your family members or your baraza, they don't care for that. They don't care for religion. For them, religion is unreal. It's untrue. They just don't give it importance. So what happens to that? In that situation, that individual who's trying to do what is right, who's trying to be in line with what's real, they become gharib. They feel the pressure from the outside, from their social circle, what we call peer pressure. And then you can even expand it further. They feel the pressure in society. Are we in a country or a society right now that is proud of this idea of believing in God and religion and sticking to one's moral, ethical values? Absolutely not. In fact, what people pride themselves on in this society right now, and it's growing worse and worse every day, is to be the other sense, the false sense of authenticity, is be true to your own desires. Forget this God stuff. Forget religion. Forget spirituality. That stuff's all nonsense. Just do whatever you feel like. Live your truth and all that other garbage. So what happens when everybody is saying all of this, and you're looking out, and part of you is calling, your fitrah is calling to you, saying, be real, be true. Believe in what's true and do what's right. Be in sync with the world, with the truth, with God, with Islam. Nobody else is doing it. The vast majority of people just don't care. That sort of feeling that comes on a person, we can call that being isolated. You can call that being a stranger in a land or being a foreigner. But I think there is a better word that we can use. A word that existentialist philosophers have used as well. And many other ulama and psychologists use this word as well. the state that you and I find ourselves in, the state of ghurba that we're in, which causes us to keep away from the truth, is what? Which is a better translation for ghurba, is that we're in a state of alienation. We're alienated. We don't feel at home here because no one else believes in what we believe, expresses what we believe, says what we believe, acts on what we believe. So what do? Then we have two choices. Either we stand our ground, we remain firm, just like the Prophet had done, just like all the ma'sumin had done, all the previous prophets, all of the ulama, the awliya, they stand firm. Or we go the other route and say, well, if society believes in what is fake and what is false truth, what is not real, they believe in lies, and a part of me is calling to something else, which is true, to Islam, to Allah, to something else. If I'm so weak that I can't fall in line with the truth and I won't stand up for it, then that means what you're going to have to do is to start covering up the truth. Kufr. You start to say, you know what, maybe this stuff is not real anymore. I have to go and act upon and do what everybody else is doing. So if other people are not going to practice and profess faith, then I have to hide from faith too. If they won't talk about God openly, then I can't talk about God openly. If they won't stand firm in their religious beliefs, even in the political sphere, well, I can't do that as well. So we start hiding our true self. We cover it. We perform that kufr. We hide our truth and reality, and we end up living a lie more and more every day. And we've gone through this verse many times, right? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Don't be like those who forget about Allah. When you forget about Allah, Allah makes you forget who you really are, your true self. Those people become fasiq. People who end up denying the truth, who deny reality. And that's unfortunately what happens to many of us. We become alienated within the greater society at large, or sometimes within our communities, if our communities aren't practicing the way that we want to, ideally, or within our own families, whether it's our extended family or even sometimes our nuclear family. And this can be very, very difficult. That alienation, that alienated feeling is very, very tough. It takes a very strong individual to be a sadiq, to be somebody who stands firm, wanting to believe in the truth, now the 7 levels, to believe in what's true, to express that truth, to explain and give information about what is true, to have their hopes and intentions in their soul really be about reality. Their emotions need to be true, their actions need to be in line with reality, and all their affairs need to be in sync with what is real and true. If that's not the case, then slowly what happens is a person goes the other way. They begin feeling ghurba in all those different levels as well. So for example, in belief. You can be gharib and alienated in your belief. You know that on one side, there's only one God. There's only one true God. It's not 3, there's no multiple gods, nothing else is true there. I have a belief in the finality of prophethood. I believe in imams and all these things. I know that to be true, but I'm in the minority and people don't really act upon this stuff, so we start moving away. And then because of that alienation, we start to falter from that belief system. Then when we want to go and express that belief, others will proudly express that we are, the Shia of Ali. We are the followers of Ali. We are the followers and lovers of Ahlul Bayt. But others, even, I'm not saying outside of life or death, taqiyya situations, just normally they say, I'm just a Muslim, right? They don't even want to express it anymore. Even if they'll express being a Muslim, nowadays it's very tough because of, different factors that exist. So people may not even want to express that. Or telling the truth. People, because telling the truth doesn't have value anymore, so they'll hide that. They'll feel alienated. Having one's hopes and intentions to say, I actually hope and desire that the 12th Imam returns and establishes an Islamic civilization. People don't want to say that kind of stuff because they might, oh, it sounds really dangerous. You sound like Daesh. Like, what is it? How is that Daesh? What does that mean? If you are Shia, if you're a Sunni, you also believe that, and if you're a Christian as well, you believe that people will come back, representatives of God will come back and establish God's kingdom on earth. Anybody who believes in a religion believes in this idea. Why are we running away from that? Why do we feel alienated all of a sudden? Our emotions. Now again, we talked about this, last time, that alhamdulillah, some of us are lucky that among us with our culture of aza and azadari, we're usually in touch with our emotions more than others are. right? We don't have this issue of crying. We don't see it as a, a non-masculine thing to do. No, alhamdulillah, we know that there's value in crying. There's catharsis through azadari. There's spiritual transformation. So we don't have that. But maybe in displaying our emotions with our own families might be a problem. All right, we saw that, for example, with the Arabs that the prophets and imams were dealing with, that, people would come, they'd see the prophet, kissing Imam Hasan, Imam Hussein, and all his children. Say, what are you doing? You're kissing your children? We don't kiss our kids. He's like, yeah, it's because your heart is messed up. If you can't express love, there's something wrong with you. So sometimes, even in our household, yeah, we might be able to cry over here, but when we get home, then that hard-heartedness comes out again. So we know that we should be able to express true emotions, right? What is real, what the prophets and imams have laid down for us, but sometimes it doesn't come out and we let our egos get in the way. I could go into, that was more in terms of, let's say, the parent-child relationship, but if I start going into husband-wife relationship, then we're going to get into a whole other, mess over there, right? Of people starting, other cultures, they're really good. I hear all these stories about certain, like Iranian ulama, they're writing their wives like love poetry and this and that. And, some are, when they hear about these stories, like, how come you don't write it? Like, well, what am I? Well, I don't know what to say to that. I can't write these love poetries, you want me to make a meme for you? I can make a meme for you. I can do something like that, but I don't know about poetry. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Yeah, I'll be honest. It's tough sometimes for us to express the emotions that we might have for our spouses. It might be very difficult. And let's be honest, for men, right, it's going to be difficult to express, right? And then, of course, the final stage, so the last two stages, in actions and in all affairs. So, for example, we might have individuals in their community wanting to express what they know to be the right thing to do, right? Shia belief. They know the fatwa of their marja is so-and-so, that people shouldn't be speaking like this, or doing ghiba, or cursing, whatever. But in a baraza, right, people are like, what's wrong with you? Right? When did you become Taliban all of a sudden? Why are you acting like this? And then you'll feel gharib. You're like, I don't want to feel gharib. I don't want to get kicked out of the baraza. I can't express this, so I have to be quiet. I can't do amr bil ma'ruf nahy anil munkar anymore, right? Because everybody's going to make me feel gharib and alienated, so I can't do that. So in order to feel part of the crowd, part of the community, we end up not saying anything sometimes. And this is very difficult. So this can happen in many different levels of life, in many different social groups. So from the highest level, we have the ulama. And some narrations, we have this sort of ghurba, the alienation that ulama feel. So one narration is attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala He's reported to have said, al-ulama ghuraba likathrati al-juhal. The ulama, the true, real scholars, the learned people, they're gharib. They're alienated. Why? Because there's so many jahil people. That's why, right? There's so many individuals in societies, in communities, that are just ignorant. They love to give their opinions. They like to, talk too much, right? And say too much. And that puts ulama in a very tough position. And we've seen throughout history, maraji are scared sometimes of giving a fatwa because the people say, look, whatever you say, we don't care. We're going to do the opposite. What is a marja supposed to do in a situation like that? And we have many stories like this. And even some ulama right now who try to explain their own opinions, right? Who might be either ultra-conservative or ultra-liberal or progressive, whatever. Even we see how they, they get attacked by different community members for being so conservative or so liberal. They can't say anything anymore. Why? Because people who have barely studied anything want to come and start attacking them, saying, oh, this person's like this, they're ignorant, or this alim doesn't know what he's doing, and this and that. Like, oh. So ulama, according to the Imam, they are some of the most alienated individuals in certain societies. And that's why you see a lot of ulama, they prefer having barazas, if you will, with other ulama, with real ulama, right? So they can sit down and have discussions. But when they go to, certain other situations, certain other barazas, it's a trial in patience, a test of patience for some of them, right? And not just ulama, sometimes even some students too. Like they might have a difficult time. We have another narration, right? So it's not just for ulama, but for mu'mineen as well. In a narration attributed to our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says, and over here I think that this is even, it's even more hardcore than what Imam Ali alayhi salam said. So he says, An-nas kulluhum bahaim. He said it 3 times. An-nas kulluhum bahaim. An-nas kulluhum bahaim. People, all humans are animals. All people are animals. It's like, Imam, can maybe an illa here, an exception? Fine. Illa qalil. Qalilun min al-mu'mineen. Not just the mu'mineen, but just a few of the mu'mineen, they're not part of this beast animal category. Okay. Well, after he says this, wal mu'min gharib. A mu'min, this true mu'min, he's gharib, he's alienated. And he says this 3 times as well. Wal mu'min gharib, wal mu'min gharib. A mu'min is a stranger, they're alienated, they're isolated. Wa tuba lil ghuraba. And blessings, or my blessings be upon the ghuraba, these strangers and alienated people who are trying to remain firm when they're surrounded by other people, even sometimes other mu'mineen, so to speak, or other Muslims who don't allow them to express their true belief, or who attack them from trying to obey the commandments of Allah and the prophets and the Imams. That's very difficult for some people, right? Is you're trying your best to get closer to God, and the other ones who claim that they want to be closer to God are the ones who are stopping us, right? It's difficult when our own community members are the ones who stab us in the back, our own family members. How tough might that be? It must be very, very difficult. So, as a kind of advice for all of us, we have to be very, very careful of the way that we sort of judge other individuals, right? Some people, we may be alienating them, right? No, we might be the ones who feel alienated, and if that's the case, then it's simple. You need to change who you're hanging out with. If you can't express the truth where you are, if you can't be real, and you know what reality is, then you need to find another crew. What else can we say? You're hanging with the wrong people. And those other individuals, if they are these beasts and animals, they're going to bring you down. So either you hang out with all these, your group, because they make you laugh, and you have the same taste in music and Bollywood movies or whatever. Okay, that might make you happy short term, and that social anxiety will go away. But then think about your akhirah, what's going to happen? And for those of you who might see that somebody in your group is like this, where you see that, look, this guy or this girl, they clearly don't like the stuff that we talk about, right? Like this person, this one individual, they like Islam, right? They read books, they're intelligent, they're creative, and all we're doing is we're talking about like sports, we're talking about shopping, we're talking about makeup tutorials and stuff like this. So maybe we should tell this person, you know what, maybe we shouldn't invite them next time. It's for their own good. And we have other narrations which talk about this actually, but I don't want to get into that. So whether we are the ones who are alienating people, or we feel alienated ourselves, the idea is we need to look around and see the people who are with, our friends, our family, our business associates, whoever, the ones we're close with, are they the ones that are real or not? Are they in sync and in line with reality, with God or not? If not, then we need to make some changes in our life. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And there's an easy test. You can ask your friends, hey, why don't we start a book club? They say, okay, sure. And you go around, you see what books they want. So some might say, oh, we can do this book by Shaykh Mutahari. And then somebody else is like, oh, I thought we were always going to do like Harry Potter or something. So there's different ways you can test it, right? Okay. So this was our second discussion about the relationship between being real and then feeling alienated and isolated from being real. And then our third and final point is about the ghurba of our eighth Imam. The famous Arif, Ayatollah Muhammad Hussein Tehrani, may Allah bless his soul, his teacher, Sayyid Hashim Haddad, he had asked his teacher, why is it that the eighth Imam is referred to as Gharib al-Ghuraba? Why? And I'm paraphrasing the advice here. He said there's 2 reasons. One is physical, one is metaphysical. And the physical one, you and I have the general idea, right? It's because this Imam of ours is taken away from his home. He's taken away from Medina. He's taken away from his family. And it's not just that one part as well. Even when he's brought to Khurasan or Tusr in Iran, right? That area, when he's with Ma'mun, Some people say, but why did he feel so isolated? Because Persia at that point, the reason Ma'mun brought him is because there was all these lovers of the Ahlul Bayt. That was his plan, right? He's like, let me get this person, Ali ibn Musa, let me get him close to me, pretend like he's going to be my successor, so the Shia start loving me. That was his plan. And it's interesting how things don't change, and politicians still do the same thing today, right? So, when Ma'mun brought him there, the other thing that he did is, you know what? I'm bringing you here, but you're just a figurehead, right? You're just a token leader. You're not the actual wali here. So they say the other part of the physical ghurba of the imam was that he was prevented from teaching. And this is something that the other imams, at least the 5th and 6th and others, this is something that they love to do, to go and instruct their Shias on these secret teachings. But he couldn't do that. The 8th imam couldn't do that. He couldn't even give fatwas, according to some historians. He couldn't explain anything. He was prevented from leading Jum'ah prayers and Eid Salah as well, except for that one famous Eid Salah, which then he was turned around. But anything regarding the maqam of walaya, of being an imam, Ma'mun stopped him from doing. That was the physical way, according to Sayyid Hashim Haddad, of why the 8th imam was Gharib al-Ghuraba. And that last point ties us into the metaphysical idea of why. Because the 8th imam possessing that maqam of walaya, of being Allah's representative, being among other quote-unquote Shias and lovers of walaya, even there, unfortunately, they did not recognize his actual maqam. So he was alienated even amongst his Shias. This is the real tragedy and ghurba of the 8th imam. He gets taken to a place where there's supposedly, apparently, the zahiran, all these lovers of his, all these followers of his, but they don't recognize his maqam. And we see this, I didn't want to go into the kind of politics of that time, but people would still accuse him, how could you work with somebody like Ma'mun? He said, isn't it clear that I've been forced to do this, that I had no choice? I was being put to death if I didn't accept this position. And he tried, right? Between the fight between the two brothers, Muhammad Amin and Al-Ma'mun, he was telling people, don't get involved in this lesser two evil nonsense. Don't get involved in these things. But, the Shias, they wouldn't bother and pay attention. Again, things don't change necessarily, right? Even in our times. And what's interesting is that some historians say that even Harun and Ma'mun themselves, they were Shias. They believed in the Ahlul Bayt. They knew that, we have narrations to prove this. Harun once was with Ma'mun on Hajj, and the 7th Imam, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wasalam, came. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa And Harun treated him so well, and was giving him all this, and I don't want to go into all the details. Anyway, afterwards, Ma'mun asks his father, he's like, who is this person that you treated like this? He said, this person, that, Musa al-Kadhim, he is God's representative on earth. He's the Imam, he's the Hujjah. And then, so Ma'mun's confused. He's like, oh, I thought that was you. Aren't you Amir al-Mu'mineen? He's like, look, I took it by force. I took it because I wanted power. But they're the ones who actually rightfully deserve it. And this is in history books, right? And Ma'mun was also taught by Shias as well, so he believed in these things. But what's interesting is even these so-called Shias, when they get in power, sometimes the things they do are very, very unreal. And they can even feel and make an imam feel alienated amongst his own followers. May Allah protect us from this sort of propaganda that exists in that time and unfortunately still exists to this day. With all this and these points, hopefully now we have a better idea of not just the physical ghurba and the alienation of the imam, not just the metaphysical ghurba of the imam, but the musibat, the masa'ib, the gham, the bala that our 8th beloved imam had to go through. Of course I have the utmost in respect for Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, of course. She's al-Masa'ib. But at the same time, there's certain features which make it seem as though there's a reason why we refer to the 8th imam as Gharib al-Ghuraba in terms of his musibat and masa'ib. Yes, it's true that both him, the 8th imam and 3rd imam are both buried far away from their families. They both were taken away. But when Hussein and Zainab, they leave Medina, they go to Mecca, they leave Mecca and they head towards Kufa, then they go to Karbala, everywhere else, the whole family's together. Zainab, Abbas, Kulthum, Hussein, Ali Akbar, Ali Asghar, the whole family's together. But when our Gharib Imam, when the 8th Imam is leaving, when he's being forcibly taken from Medina, he's not allowed to come with anybody. Do you know that some historians say that he had 40 siblings, and none of them came with him. None of them were allowed to join him. And we know his sister, Bibi Ma'asuma, whom we'll be discussing inshallah Tuesday night, she tried her best to reach, but she was unable to reach. Many of her other brothers tried to reach their beloved brother, but they couldn't reach as well. And people always ask, why is it that we see all across the Arab world, leading up from Medina to Iran, to Mashhad specifically, why do we see all these Imamzadis? Why do we see all them buried randomly? It's because every single one of them, the minute their brother was taken from them, they went towards their brother to try to get him back. And every place they went, Ma'mun would send soldiers to kill them where they were. Over and over again, they were coming after their brother, their Imam, and they were killed. This is the ghurba, this is the aza of our 8th Imam. He's taken away from his own son. His son is left in Medina. His family is left across in Medina. He's all alone among others who claim to be his followers in Mashhad. But even there, he's not able to be the real wali and the real Imam there because they won't obey him. It's interesting, in Karbala, at least Imam Hussein, he's able, as everybody passes away, he's able to run to the bodies. Imam Hussein, when his son falls down, when Ali Akbar falls down, he's able to run to the body of Akbar. And he's able to give him his final salams. When Qasim falls down, he gets to run to the body of Qasim and give him his final salams. When Abbas is down, Hussein gets to run to the body of Abbas. Hussein gets to say farewell to Zainab, to Kulthum. He gets to say farewell to Sakina. Hussein is with Ali Asghar in his last moments. But we would say, what does Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Radad get? As he's leaving Medina, and as he begins to leave, he's saying his final salams to all of his family members who he won't be seeing ever again. He goes to the grave of Rasulullah and sends his final salams. He goes to the grave of his mother Fatima and sends his final salams. He moves towards Medina. And as all of the other family members die, he's unable to go to their bodies. And they say that even finally, at the last moments of all the other Imams, when they're in their last moments, at least the family was there. But the ghurba of our 8th Imam was so much. When Ma'mun had given him that poison, when he had finally drank that poison, they say the poison was so strong within him that he had fallen down. But the Imam was so gharib, there was nobody there to catch him. So he had fallen down and was left all alone on the floor. When he was being buried, when his janazah was happening, it was only his enemies that were present. There was nobody there. His own son wasn't allowed to attend his janazah. This is the ghurba of our Imam. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد.
या हुसैन मरने की तुम्हारी है कैसी खबर आई है मरने की तुम्हारी है कैसी खबर आई है दिल टुकड़े हो गया है भैया मेरे परदेसी यू फातिमा के भैया मेरे परदेसी यू फातिमा भैया मेरे परदेसी कैसी खबर आई खुश निकले थे वतन से फिर आए ना वतन में कैसा सफर हुआ है भैया मेरे परदेसी यू फातिमा भैया मेरे परदेसी फातिमा कहती थी भैया मेरे परदेसी कैसी مہمانی کے ہیلے سے بلوایا تھا ظالم نے، مہمانی کے ہیلے سے بلوایا تھا ظالم نے، مارا تمہیں دگا سے بھیا میرے پردے. یوں فاطمہ کہتی تھی، یوں فاطمہ کہتی تھی بھیا میرے، یہ کیسے خبر آئی. ہائے بابا ہائے بابا کہ بچی سو گئی، نہ صدا رونے کی آئی، نہ صدا رونے کی آئی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان میں پوچھا صغرا نے سکینہ کو تو زینب نے کہا، پوچھا صغرا نے سکینہ کو تو زینب نے کہا، میں سکینہ چھوڑ آئی، میں سکینہ چھوڑ آئی. شام کے زندان، شام کے زندان میں یاد جب بابا کی آئی، یاد جب بابا کی آئی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان میں باپ کا سر پا کے ایسی چپ ہوئی کہ پھر کبھی، باپ کا سر پا کے ایسی چپ ہوئی کہ پھر کبھی، نہ صدا رونے کی آئی، نہ صدا رونے کی آئی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان میں یاد جب بابا کی آئی، یاد جب بابا کی آئی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان. باپ کا سینے پہ سر رکھ کے جسے آتی ہو نیند، جانے کیسے نیند آئی، جانے کیسے نیند آئی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان میں یاد جب بابا کی آئی، یاد جب بابا کی آئی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان میں ہائے مر کے بھی سکینہ کو رہائی نہ ملی، ہائے مر کے بھی سکینہ کو رہائی نہ ملی. بائی نے تربت بنائی، بائی نے تربت بنائی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان میں یاد جب بابا کی آئی، یاد جب بابا کی آئی. شام کے زندان میں، شام کے زندان. یا حسین حسین یا 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 حسین
Before continuing with the Nahad tonight, just want to share a few couplets expressing our devotion and seeking the intercession of our blessed 8th Imam, inshallah. And I ask you all to join me in this. دل پہ مولا ہے میرے صرف حکومت تیری، دل پہ مولا ہے میرے صرف حکومت تیری، بجتی رہتی ہے میرے سینے میں نوبت تیری، بات ثابت ہوئی، بات ثابت ہوئی، میرے سینے میں بھی ایک حرم ہے تیرا، یا امام رضا، 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 میری اس وقت تیرے در پہ نظر ہے مولا، میری اس وقت تیرے در پہ نظر ہے مولا، پر تجھے میری مصیبت کی خبر ہے مولا، جو پریشان ہے جلد کر دیجئے ان کی حاجت روا، یا امام رضا، 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 روزے سے تیرے دور ہیں ہم تو بہت مجبور ہیں، آنکھوں سے آنسو ہے رواں، دل بھی غموں سے چور ہے، تجھ سے کہیں گے حالی دل، اذن زیارت کر عطا، نانا نبی دادا علی، دادی تیری خیر النساء، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، نانا نبی دادا علی، دادی تیری خیر النساء، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، تو ہے مسیحا جہاں، شاہ خراساں ہے لقب، یوں ہر فرشتہ روز پر آتا ہے تیرے بعد، ہاں رد نہیں ہوتی تیرے روزے پہ کوئی بھی دعا، نانا نبی دادا علی، دادی تیری المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، بینائی بھی دیتا ہے تو، گویائی بھی دیتا ہے تو، مانگے اگر
تجھ سے کوئی دانائی بھی دیتا ہے تو بھی تو باب علم ہے، تو بھی تو باب علم ہے، تو بھی تو ہے مشکل کشا، نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری خیر المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، تیرے ہی دسترخوان پر ہوتا ہے جنت کا گھما، تیرے ہی دسترخوان پر ہوتا ہے جنت کا گھما، جنوں ملک لیتے ہیں سب تیرے ہی در سے روٹیاں، مولا تیرا مقروض ہے، مولا تیرا مقروض ہے، ہر ایک گدا و بادشاہ، نانا نبی دادی تیری خیر النساء، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، روزے سے تیرے دور ہیں ہم تو بہت مجبور ہیں، آنکھوں سے آنسو ہے رواں، دل بھی غموں سے چور ہیں، تجھ سے کہیں گے حال دل اذن زیارت کر عطا، نانا نبی دادا علی خیر النساء، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، ریحان مجھ کو ہے یقین مولا رضا کی ذات سے، یہ نوکری شبیر کی جائے گی اب نہ ہاتھ سے، نوحے لکھوں گا میں صدا دیتے رہیں گے وہ صلہ، نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری خیر النساء، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا، المدد مولا رضا. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن، عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.